So without further ado, let's start. Hi, Qasim.
Hi, everyone. Hope you had good lunch. Good afternoon. So I want to talk about advancing internet technologies in Southeast Europe. And what I mean by internet technologies, it is IPv6 uptake in the region and routing security in context of RPKI. So if you have followed news in the past, you might have seen articles like this where SIDN in 2022 asked the Dutch government or urged them to move their infrastructure towards IPv6 or adopt it in their network. Quite recently, we saw a post from Christian on IPv6 working group where he informed us that the Czech government has approved a resolution where they will stop providing government services over IPv4 starting from 2022. It's a bit far away, but nevertheless, a really good news. We also saw Amazon changing their charging schemes where they will charge for IPv4 addresses. And I think these are really good news for the IPv6 adoption because it provides a good incentives for operators to actually start adopting v6. However, we are still far off. I like this example from the website called whyknowipv6.com, where it has the top sinners. These are the domains that are most or highly visited and still not provide IPv6 support. So in the context of Southeast Europe, we did a recent survey in 2023 and asked the operators of their IPv6 adoption. Half of the respondents said that they have actually implemented v6 in their network, and future readiness was a key motivation. They also pointed out few challenges, one of them being the feature parity between services that run on v4 and v6. I think the latter one, that is convincing decision makers to move away from v4, is a more important one and needs more thinking and motivation. So given that was the survey, we want to also see what we can observe from our data sets. So we look into allocations and routing data to see what we can observe about the v6 from the network standpoint. So overall, if you look at our members in Southeast Europe, we see Romania and Bulgaria have the majority of the LIR, or majority of the members in these countries. One interesting observation over here is Bulgaria has a quarter of the population of Romania, yet they have more members. So I would like to hear more from the Bulgarian community that why this is the case. We see this trend when we look at the IPv6 allocations. Over time, we see Romania and Bulgaria again leading with the more allocations. To look into more, then you see there are more active LIR accounts as well. So the total counts for LIRs for these two countries are also on a higher side. One possible explanation is if you look at the trend lines, you see there is a peak from 2007 until around 2021. This is the time we were running out of v4 space. So this could be actually a reason that there were more LIR accounts that were running towards, or more LIRs that were running towards the last bit of v4 remaining. So less to do with v6 and more to do with v4, unfortunately. We also wanted to see, this is just the allocations, and anybody who gets an account can request for allocations. But we also wanted to see what we can say from the routing table. And counting v6 address space is a useless exercise because the size is so vast. So we came up with a different metric. We call it IPv6 capability. And it is basically the percentage of an ASs registered in a country that announce both v4, v6, or v6 pairs compared to the ASs that are only announcing v4 space. This metric, of course, just to clarify, doesn't mean adoption. It just means that the address is routed. However, this is an important metric because it tells us something that there is an initial move towards an IPv6 broader adoption. Given the metric, we see Greece is doing really well. It's actually above the EU average, a little bit above, but still following the EU average. Albania, Montenegro is following them. And then again, as I said, Bulgaria, Romania, even though they have higher counts for the LIR accounts, they are falling behind for the v6 announcements from their ASs. Another interesting observation was when we look at this from the longitudinal standpoint, we see Greece has always been doing well in the past decade. And we see a very interesting trend where you see a peak around mid-February, March 2020. And somebody from maybe Greek academic networks can explain us what happened during that 1 week, because this is based on weekly data from RACE. So we see that academic ASs, so they are highlighted on the right side, somehow start originating the v6 prefixes. So now moving towards the routing security. I'm not going to go into detail of RPKI. I think there was some very interesting sessions yesterday which went into a lot of detail about RPKI, ROA, BGPsec. So just to recap, it's a two-step process, signing your own prefixes, that is ROA, and verifications of others, that is ROV. When we look at the ROA coverage over time, we see a big disparity between v4 and v6 address space. And one of the reasons we see this is v4 space is concentrated in fewer ASs or fewer providers, while v6 is spread across large number of LIRs or large number of ASs. And to get closer towards 100% coverage, for v4, fewer organizations need to start signing their prefixes or start doing ROA. Compared to v6, we need a larger proportion of networks to actually start signing their prefixes. Just to put this, illustrate this from the Greece example again, you see, for instance, OTE, when they covered their space with ROA, you see a jump from 25 to 60% for Greece for ROA coverages. Then again, there are a few jumps when Vodafone decided to cover their space with ROAs in Greece. So again, for v6, Greece, which is doing really well as well, but you see around 40% for v6. And the call for action over here is that ROA, signing a ROA should not be very difficult, and more LIR should be doing it also for their v6 space. And we should see some uptake over here as well for the future. Measuring ROV is not an easy step because you actually need a vantage point inside an AS to see if they drop invalids. We used a methodology called ROVista that was presented in IMC, Internet Measuring Conference, last year. I'm not going to go in too much detail about how ROVista works. I'm citing their paper in the references, so if you want to learn more about it, or you can talk to me after the presentation. But basically what it does is calculates a score per ASN based on RPKI invalid prefixes that the ASN can reach. It classifies a number between 0 to 100. We used a more inclusive approach where we classify AS as implementing ROV if the score is greater than 0. Again, that indicates that there is some ROV deployment for an AS. Another important way to look at this is not only see from the edge or stub ASs, but look more closely towards the transit AS for ROV. Since they are more crucial for ROV, so they can drop, if there is a route hijack, they can drop it and stop the propagation. To do that, we use another metric called AS hegemony. And what that does is basically find the centrality of AS in the context of a network or a country. So we use hegemony per country, and it gives a number from 0 to 1, 1 being most ASNs are dependent in that region on that AS. So given these two metrics, we come up with this picture. Here you can see different colors. So the dark blue colors are the ASNs that are registered in Greece and are doing ROV, and they are also very central to the Greek connectivity. The light blue colors here are, for example, 174 or 6939. Probably you guys know these networks. They are foreign ASs, so not registered in Greece, and they're doing ROV. The more important ones are the ones that are highlighted with the red circles. These are central to the Greek ecosystem, and they're not doing ROV. So a good example over here, for example, the GRNet is doing ROV, but for instance, NOAA, we see one of their AS is doing ROV, the other is not. Somebody from NOAA can clarify, but what I can see is the other AS, if I look at the AS name in Whois, it's Wind AS, and it's recently acquired by NOAA, and I think they might be updating the policies. The same trends we see for Bulgaria and Montenegro, where we see certain AS, so it's a mixed kind of a picture, where you see several ASs that are central to the connectivity of a country doing ROV, and while the others are not doing it. For Montenegro, the largest telecom is doing ROV, while all the other, which are very central to the country, are not doing ROV, and we have also missing data for one of the major ASs. To recap, while there are strides that have been made for IPv6 deployment, especially in the context of routing, but I still think there is a lot of room to grow. Greece aligns well with given the IPv6 capability metrics, but the rest of the region has to really do an uptake in IPv6 moving forward. RIPE NCC did a survey again for 2023, asking people for why or the reasons for not doing RPKI, and 52% said that it's the knowledge gap. There was a very nice tutorial yesterday. I hope you guys have followed it. It's one way to learn more about RPKI. And we also offer free courses to LIRs. There is L&D team here. You guys can go to them and ask them about the free webinars, trainings. We have a lot of nice RPKI courses that can help you move in this area. You can learn more. So there's the entire methodology, explanations, a lot more slides, presentation of how these countries look like in our article. So I hope you guys read the article. If there are any questions, please do reach out to me. Some of the references for the work that we used for our methodology are here. And yeah, if you have questions, please do let me know. I hope it was somewhat knowledgeable for you. Yes.
Thank you, Qasim. I'm Adonis Liomis, working for GRNet Greek and Ariane. Just an explanation why you saw back in 2020 this explosion in V6.
Sorry.
Is it?
Yes, this one.
All of our members are single homed to GRNet. So actually back to 2020 there was no actual need to deaggregate. But we thought that since we have members with public ASs, why not expose them to the public internet? And one of the reasons why was for the RIPE to have the ability to visualize connectivity to those prefixes. So that's why you saw there the gap. It was about, as far as I remember, 30 IPv6 prefixes that were announced. And we did the same for the IPv4, which was about 100 or something like this. Cool. So back then in 2020 we started deaggregating.
So it's the reason for the aggregation.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that explains well. But thanks for the story. Yeah, I was really looking forward for somebody to actually explain this peak to us.
If you have a question, please go to the microphone. If not, then we thank Qasim once more.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Next, I would like to invite the panelists to come to the stage, and Hisham will be a moderator, and he will take over from here, introducing the next presentation, presenter, and all the panelists.
everyone. Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the IPv6 panel. My name is Hisham Ibrahim, and I'm happy to be joined by a panel of experts that will be sharing a little bit more from their insights about IPv6 and what they're seeing in the region here. We also would like to hear questions from you, thoughts from you as well, so let's make this session as interactive as possible. For the first part of the session, we also have a few slides. We asked one of our panelists, Vasja, that will be presenting now a question about, like, what are the first steps that you need to think about and consider as an ISP when you're beginning to think about IPv6. It's one of the first barriers that we see, so we thought somebody that actually did the work can give us a good explanation on that. So, Vasja, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vasja. I'm sharing with you our experience deploying IPv6 after the IPv4 ran out. We are running our little ISP on the northern east border of Italy, and we are in 4, 2 employers and 2 owners, and mostly operate in Trieste province. We are RIPE members since 2021. What we did, we operate the ISP from 2018, and we inherited some customers from our previous ISP that moved away, and we continued the story, and we get the network already done, some part of it. So what changed till 2018, now we have around 1,000 customers, and we are able to sell now not only fixed wireless access, but also fiber to the cabinet and fiber to the home access, as well as any other services. So why we started to implement IPv6? First of all, why not? Because we had resources from RIPE, and were the only resources that we get, since the waiting list was very long, and it took around 10 months at the time to get our /24. We have to lease other /24s to start the business. And the main motivation was that we want to offer our customers some better quality of their services, of their experience. So that was the starting point. We want to get rid of the double NAT, the NAT on the customer's CPS and our NAT. So this was our main motivation. Also, the network complexity was bigger because we have to run NAT, and every node that you put in, it's a complexity. So, and of course, IPv6 is the natural evolution, and it's the future. So we proceed in that way. First steps. Just check our equipment if there were some problems. We saw that mostly all the equipment was supporting IPv6. There were some problems with our BRAS, NAS accesses. Not all were compatible. So we have to upgrade some part of the software, and then we were able to start. We deployed also all the internal essential services as DNS, local forwarders, and stuff like that. And that was the easy part. What was the main problems that we got when deploying, when we did the mass deploy to our customers? We saw that most of the CPS till now comes with IPv6 disabled by default. And this is not plug and play. So if you have a new customer, you have to manually do it. And some of our old CPS does not support prefix delegation, and neither /56, neither /48. We are delivering to all our customers /48 by default. We decided so, it's a ripe recommendation, and we have plenty of it, so we just decided this way. We also decided, by recommendation, to delegate statically all the IPv6/48, so that once the customer comes in, it has always the same IP, no problems for if he disconnects or something similar. We faced another problem, some local IT staff that it's not used with IPv6, they just refuse to implement it. And we spent a lot of time convincing them that they should move on and adopt it, but it's a hard work. They should, but they have to understand by themselves when will be the right time to do so. There were also some vendor-specific problems that have been solved. The new software that we have to install, it's not yet completed. We solved the problem with the PPOS server, and the PPOS server had problem delegating blocks of IPv4 only in conjunction with radius, otherwise it's working. And also the backbone part is not yet finished, so there are some problems on MPLS, LDP, and VPLS, stuff like that. And accounting is not yet finished in IPv6 accounting. So it's in beta testing right now with the latest authorized version. What helped us, why we need accounting, because by law in Italy we have to filter, we have to do DNS filtering for parental control. So we have to bind the addresses to the customers, and each customer have to choose what level of, the level of filtering that they want to be provided with. The main benefits. Since the start of deploying IPv6, we just saw that traffic flows to IPv6 naturally. And so we have a 20 to 30% of reduction of IPv4 traffic. So we reduced our traffic logs, and also the load on our NAT devices decreased. There was a performance increase because we have now only routed traffic, and there was a greater efficiency and failover because of the routing only architecture. And in one move, we get rid of 2 levels of NATs. And of course, it can be a business case for us. So this is just a comparison of the IPv4 versus IPv6 traffic. The blue one is IPv4. Please consider that only half of our customers is actively using IPv6. So by the end of the year, the IPv6 traffic should be around 40 to 50%. Mainly, the IPv6 traffic is coming from OTT providers, so Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and so on. What, for the end, our next ideas to deploy some tools for our customers so they can test their connection for the IPv6 connection or dual stack connection at home. We have to finish to migrate some services also in dual stack, but we have to have these services in-house. And we'd like to move our backbone to IPv6 only. And the other stuff is that we will be very happy if our VoIP provider will provide us with IPv6 VoIP services. In Italy, that is not so easy because we are one of the few providers that provide the customers with IPv6. And we have in mind to do some kind of promotional events like IPv6 days to invite all the customers with their equipment so we can set up it for them and just to promote the new technology to be spread. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Vasja. And when you submitted the slides, we really like that part where you describe, like step by step, what an operator needs to be do. Because in many of the discussions and conferences, people just say, yeah, just do IPv6. And then we find the operators going, I find all these barriers. So it was really great that you could actually describe your line of thought there. But maybe a question to you is, was it worth it, like going through all this for your company? Do you think it was well spent time and investment in getting IPv6 up and running?
We spent time and efforts of deploying IPv6. It's, of course, it is worked because we gain a lot of experience doing so. So we can use that experience to help others, but also to do business in this way. And the network complexity diminished as we have to do NAT and so on. And also we have two layers of networks that one can be resilient to the other. So if there is some problem on IPv4, we have still IPv6 that is running.
Another question is, you said you gained a lot of experience. Knowing what you know now, is there something you would have done different or started from somewhere else?
Maybe we will start before.
Mm-hmm. very, very good answer. Thank you for that, Vasja. Now, when Qasim was presenting, he showed the figures from the region here, and Greece being very obviously showing very nice figures and very high numbers for the region here. And it would be very great if we could actually get some insight into that. And I'm very happy and pleased to have George here on the panel. George, if you don't mind introducing yourself and talking a little bit about the experience here in Greece.
Is it open? Yes. Good evening, everybody. I'm Georgios Manousakis, representing OTE, the largest company here in Greece, providing all kinds of services in the telecommunications and not only. Actually, our stories goes way back in time. We started working in 2004. Back then, there were 4 companies that eventually were merged. And in a funny way, they kind of work in parallel, even without knowing each other. Okay. So fixed started at the beginning, and then mobile followed. Actually, the international part as well. You couldn't get in the world in a different way. I was discussing this with Elena as well, trying to plan this. That what are we going to say again? We've been saying the same things again and again for many, many years in different panels. Anyway, currently, it's the default service for our customers is a dual stack service with private IPv4 addressing. We have some services that are IPv6 only, like the mobile IMS telephony. It's a common example. We are targeting launching the 5G SA fixed wireless access product, again using IPv6 only, plus NAT6 to reach before destinations. And we try to have our services also available in dual stack, both for our sake and for our competitors' sake, okay? to help our CDN and their CDN as well. What else? Our traffic is about 50% V6. That I would say it's less than I would expect, because most of the traffic is towards the big CDNs, which are all, of course, dual stack enabled. Only a few of our subscribers decide to stay back, if I would call it like this, in an IPv4 only world. And this is more often observed in the fixed world. And I believe it's a cultural thing there that lead us to this difficult future, let's say. Yeah, that's most about it.
No, thanks for that. And you touched at the end there on a very relevant point that I wanted to ask about, because you do provide both mobile and fixed services. And one of the points that Vasja pointed at when he was presenting is the CPE and their abilities to actually be able to do V6. And what I've heard from a lot of operators is V6 on mobile is easier because all the devices now are modern and they get replaced over time, whereas maybe some of the modems at the house are a lot longer and might not support the technology. Is that your experience?
Well, there are a lot of stories I could share about that. Mobile devices are easier because customers also try to get a newer device, a more expensive device, which more or less comes with the capabilities. But it's not that easy in the back end. So the devices are easier, but the back end is trickier sometimes. And we've been discussing about this many years. The biggest problem in the mobile world is the V6 only transition, not the dual stack. The dual stack was easier. The V6 only is it's a painful situation. Okay. In the fixed world, things are a bit different the other way around. Yes, indeed, CPs there are harder to find. We are in communication with our vendors to provide the software that we need to run. Again, I'm talking about IPv6 only, so I would dare to say it's the next era. Okay, so it's a bit different situation that you had to deal with, because we want to save our IPv4 space, which is really valuable. Okay, so we want to push our subscribers to IPv6 only. So yeah, in the fixed world, the CPs are a little harder to deal with. You fix something and then something else is broken and go back and forth again and again. Okay, but it's not, as I mentioned before, that in the mobile, it's so easy as it sounds. The terminals are, but in general, it's not.
No, fair enough. One other thing that we normally hear from operators is there's no demand from our customers for V6, so we won't do it until there's like a business case or there's demand. However, what you pointed out is that you proactively started working on V6 in anticipation for this happening. So just curious to what you would say to operators like that.
It's true. It's not an effortless job to do, okay? And it's not only the technical parts, okay? I saw this, your slides. I was feeling a bit romantic. They remind me my days 10, 15 years ago, trying to point out if some firewalls supported or not. But actually, in our days, the problems are more to distribute the information, to make your company aware, to educate the customer care, all the troubleshooting flows. This is way harder, okay? It's not the technical problems anymore, but it's and it takes time, okay? I would say that the subscribers would never ask for it. Ideally, they shouldn't even be aware of it. Okay, that would be ideal. And this is the case mostly for the mobile users. Most of them don't care. They just want to have services to see their Facebook page or their Gmail or whatsoever, the TV content. And that's bridging with what I mentioned earlier in the fixed world. There are more needs. There are VPNs, there are corporate environments, and when you go towards this direction, it's a mess. They don't want it. They want to avoid it.
Yeah. Thanks for that, George. Pavel, looking at you, other experiences from the region. Now, Montenegro has been trying to get IPv6 in the country for some time. I know you and the university have had a lot of efforts there. So maybe introducing yourself, your efforts that are happening, and what you're seeing in Montenegro as well.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Pavle Mijušković. I'm a Deputy Executive Director at the Agency for Telecommunication and Postal Services. So we are National Regulatory Authority for Electronic Communication. And on the beginning, I can still say that we don't have a mandate for IPv6, but we do everything to promote it. So our story actually started in 2019. Strategy for Information Society Development in Montenegro has defined some goals, and one of the goals was to do the strategy to plan for transition to IPv6 in Montenegro. So we hired a group of professors from the university. They did the job. They defined everything as professors do. We have the plan, how to do transition to IPv6 in the state in the state institution. Also, we have one pilot project in the University of Montenegro. Actually, at the end of 2019, the responsible ministry, they established the IPv6 task force, and it was end of the 2019. Then, beginning of 2020, we implement the IPv6 on the Internet Exchange in Montenegro. We have to thank Jan George, who gave us to do this. 2020 it started to COVID, so we had to postpone some activities. In the beginning of 2021, we installed also IPv6 in our tool for measuring quality of Internet service, but it was just a start because nobody has an IPv6 address, but we tried to promote something like this. Then we organized 2 workshops on IPv6 with the ITU. Then in 2023, we finally got the lab for IPv6. We established this in the University of Montenegro. Then we one workshop with the RIPE-NCC Advanced. After we bring the again Jan George to tell operator answer on all their questions about implementation. We did it also in 2023. And 2024, we established the NOG in Montenegro. So I think we do everything to promote IPv6 with engineers and technical people, but all the time, as they say, they don't have demand for this, they don't have business plan, and I think it's our last try to do something like it. Probably we have to include the government more than it's right now, because we have the steady investment in the sector. So last year was about 73 million, it's 10% more than previous year. We always have this increase in number of users, increase the traffic, let's say, in mobile, it's 41% per year, per user it's 30% per year. We have 5G coverage of population, 83%. They have 45% of the 5G phones in fixed also. We have high increase of 47% of traffic in total per user, 41%. 67% of connections are 100 megs and more. 50% of connections are on fiber. 80% of households have possibility to go 100 megs and more. I think we almost did everything, but with this IPv6, it's not going. I don't know why they don't want to implement it. So they say, let's say, this customer equipment, they have to change, but they increase the speed for, let's say, 400 to 1 gig. They have to change it if you want to have 1 gig per second the speed. Probably they don't have I don't know, some cases, and also we have, let's say, right now it's 620,000 people in Montenegro, so it's not huge population, but right now we have the biggest problem with this law enforcement agency because we cannot identify the person uniquely behind the one IP address because of that, and that maybe can do something to speed up this, but I am not sure what else it can do.
Thanks for that, Pavel. One of the things that Qasim mentioned when he was at the beginning of his presentation is that the Czech Republic government mentioned or declared that they will be providing IPv6 only services by the year 2032, right? And they just said they're going to do that on their infrastructure. So they're incentivizing operators to do that, not mandating, not regulating, but saying this is our expectation to be able to provide services on IPv6 only. Do you think something like that could work in Montenegro?
But I think it probably be the only way, because I remember when they started, they say this Rome like a home in the Western Balkan 6 countries. It is signed agreement in 2014, and maybe by 2021 or 20 we have started to provide this Rome like a home. And we always can find excuse because we have a COVID, then we have in 2022, we have the cyber attack on the government infrastructure, so we spend almost half of the 2020 and 2023 to recover from this. But probably it will be only thing that the government say that they should start offering only services on IPv6. But when you look also at the test index regarding this e-services, we are the lowest in 5.8. It's below the Western Balkan 6 countries. So also we have to offer more these e-services that probably to train the government, the operator to provide this. But on the other hand, the state or the governments are the bigger customer in Montenegro. So probably they have the power to tell them, okay, we want this by a certain year.
Thanks for that. And just looking at the slide that's being projected here, though Montenegro ranks 3rd in terms of percentage of IPv6 capable ASNs, because that's relative, right? So I'm assuming Romania, Bulgaria that are in the bottom of that list probably have more IPv6 capable, but because it's relatively speaking, maybe Qasim, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, right. That's true, actually. The numbers, if you look at not the relative, but the actual numbers, then you'll, of course, find more. But yeah, the reason for having a percentage is just to see from the relative count that what we see. And in that regard, I agree. Another thing which I was just following on the thought is the incentive structure. And like at least the work I've done or seen so far, like there are people, the operators want it. IPv6 has been talked so much over so many years, but I still think unless the incentives align, unless there are pushes for this, it's going to be like similar picture next SE, a similar picture in future as well. So I fully agree with what Czech government is doing. And I also, in a way, think like what Amazon did was like having some kind of a cost benefit of actually moving your service to V6, even though I think why they did it was because they're running out of V4. But in any way, the outcome is having some incentive. And to me, that is a bigger story there. So to move forward, I think there needs to be some way the industry needs to start creating incentives because yeah, I understand that there is some limitations with the technology, some limitations with CPE, but all of them can be solved if there are enough incentives. And yeah, we have been over a decade or more than a decade talking about V6. So, and there is some movement, of course. It's not completely lost or nothing is happening, but still, I think unless we align those together, and the demand then rises, then we will actually see more and more adoption over time.
Yeah, thanks for that. I know you and the research team at the RIPE NCC, as well as the data storytelling team, do a lot of work in looking across the entire service region and comparing numbers, looking into internet penetration numbers and stuff. how do you see Southeast Europe compared to other parts of the service region and the world as well? Is there any lessons learned that you could share based on that?
So yeah, definitely. I think the Southeast Europe is lagging behind. The rest of the Europe is doing well. Netherlands is one good example. Germany another one. And if you look at the numbers, not only from the capable part, but EPNIC has data which they collect from Google Ads that also shows the adoption to some degree. And there you see, for instance, India doing really well. China is also having really good now, like more and more ASNs and more people are supported V6. So I think those guys are doing pretty well. From what I know, that India also has cellular networks that are doing V6. So it does seem like other parts of the world are moving forward in this, and the SEE region needs to, I think, step up the game a bit.
And just about that incentives, because you mentioned like AWS and there being like a price to continue to do IPv4, right? Because and a lot of people that have been talking about doing IPv6 for years have been saying that, you know, there needs to be the right markets to that, like the checks and balances when it comes to pricing needs to act in that favor. What I heard you say a couple times now is you think that these having IPv4 more as a service and it costing more would help with V6?
Yeah, I think that probably is one of the way to tilt it, that make IPv4 so costly that people would start thinking about like a cheaper solution, because at the end of the day, businesses are also there to make profit. And if V6 is more profitable, I think that's gonna change from the perspective of people start thinking about, okay, we need to now actually move because it's gonna save more money. One of the examples we already saw, that it took some time and effort from moving towards V6, but at the end it does save some pain for the engineers to don't have to deal with CGNAT and services like that, and then easy troubleshooting. But from the business standpoint, I think unless those kind of things are there, then the management probably would start thinking about the V6. And that's also what we see from the survey, that there are two challenges, right? There was one about V4 and V6, that's understandable. The other is actually the decision makers have to start thinking about V6 only. So that was also pointed in our survey.
No, thanks for that. And looking at you again, Vasja, is there a point where you might be providing like your default services on IPv6 only, and if people want services on V4, then you charge them for that? Do you see that point happening anytime soon?
We thought about that at the beginning, what to do if we move to IPv6 only and do some kind of translation. But the easiest way, having already running a network on IPv4, was to just add the layer of IPv6. And we saw that the traffic just goes naturally to IPv6, so we are just waiting that the decreasing of the IPv4 traffic. Yep. There is no reason to do, maybe to force it to IPv6. It'll just go naturally.
But as you pointed out, you're currently running basically two networks, like a V4 network and a V6 network on the same devices, dual stacked, right? At one point in time, do you see that it might make sense that you just focus on the V6? And if a customer comes and asks for V4, then you charge them for that? Because that was one of the ideas that was floated a long time ago. So
maybe yes, but we have to wait that the trend will be inverted. So that most of the traffic, at least 80%, will be on IPv6, and only 20% would be on IPv4. In that case, maybe translation maybe will have sense.
Okay, thanks for that. And George, similar question. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but also in the context of also mobile, because we've seen some doing IPv6 only for mobile. And is that something that, I know there's some challenges, and I'd love for you to explain them, maybe like roaming and such, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Okay, well, As I mentioned, our target is to launch this new service in the 5GSA world, IPv6 only. So we are really struggling to go towards this direction. In general, I would say it's, but why? Because as I mentioned again before, mobile users don't really care how they're going to get the content. But I think Adonis, I don't locate him now, mentioned earlier that in Greece, there are 1.5 operators that are doing V6. So there is one that is doing, I would dare to say that would be us, half, which is one of our competitors, and 0, which is the third of our competitors. Okay, so if we stop providing a dual stack or charge it differently, they would just leave the company and go to our competitor. So it's really not an option. Okay, we are doing what we're doing. A bit romantic, we believe in that, but it's also help us in the way we evolve our network, not our network operations, because you mentioned it perfectly. We have to operate 2 networks in parallel, but eventually, I think it's worth it to do that. Okay.
Yeah, please, Pavel.
I just want to jump in about this pricing because it's regulated market. You have to know this. So to increase the price on some products, it's if you're not only if it's not easy as it looks like, because they have like situation with this switch off of the copper. So you have to switch from the copper to fiber. So to do this, you have, even if you are, let's say, dominant operator, you have to fulfill some first to fulfill the threshold, and then after you can switch the copper network. And then sometimes some people, they don't want to switch from the copper to the fiber, for them no reason. But it's still regulated. It's not like it's so easy to just to increase the price for the same service, but on a different technology, different prices. Especially if you don't operator, you cannot do this. The rest one, you can do this. So you have to also to take care about this.
Yeah, no, makes sense. At this point, I'd like to open the mics. If people from the audience would like to ask questions and comments. Yes, I see a few. Great, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olena Lutsenko. I come from Kiev. I'm working as managing director of Black Sea region in Athens. I'm not sure that everyone knows, but we as big backbone provider for providers to the local ISP. And you speak about the pricing. Can it speed up or not the adoption IPv6? And I can share with you initiative what our CEO dropped last month. The threaten is providing free of charge IPv6 any hour on net point. It's around 60 countries now. If alongside IPv4 as a main written IP transit. That's why. Let's see what happens on the Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania next year, because it's my direct responsibility of the driving business. That's why maybe next year in Sofia we can discuss what is going on. It's additional percentage or not. That's why, and yeah, we launched it over DVDM last 2 years in this country. That's why terabit is available capability for connectivity. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, and hopefully, indeed, the SEE meeting in Bulgaria, you could be on stage and you tell us the experiences that you see there.
I have a lot of experience to share, for example, for Ukrainian driving business during the different times. That's why, yeah, thank you. I will be.
Thank you for that. Yeah, please.
Hi, Branimir Reiter. I'm actually the chair of the Croatian NOG, and we had our NOG event last Thursday, and we had the exact same panel regarding IPv6. And why we have only roughly 4 to 5% of all IP traffic on IPv6 in Croatia. So we had on the panel like ISPs, regulators, and industry members, and just wanted to share the conclusions there because, yeah, the IPv6 adoption in Croatia is really low, and basically the reason was that, first of all the operators have enough IPv4 address space. They don't see any need to go to IPv6, although their core network is dual stack. They offer IPv6 to business customers, but the final push to push the IPv6 towards the residential customers is missing. So what is needed to make it widely adopted? It doesn't help that the government is purely IPv4. But basically, the push to make IPv6 widely accessible is financial. So there is a big issue with CPEs. Not that they don't support IPv6, is that the vendor, first of all, the vendors don't care for the small deployments, and each and every operator has probably like 10 different vendors in production. It's real difficult to make them all support IPv6 in a working way, because each and every has their own issues, and fixing each and every issue takes time, costs money. And for the management of these big ISPs, they don't see the value in providing IPv6 apart from like it's the future, because it costs money, and all these ISPs are nowadays understaffed, and there's always lacking money. So basically, there is no push in the creation community regarding IPv6 due to these reasons. And now what we see is that the regulator actually is looking into how to force companies to implement IPv6 for the residential market, because there is currently no other way, since the ISPs are unwilling to provide to the residential customers, purely for financial reasons. Yeah.
Thanks for that. And just to clarify, if I understand you correctly, the ISPs in Croatia do not provide the CPEs, or do they?
They do, but it's always like a mass production, but they buy it in bulk.
Yes.
And the price is the common denominator. The lowest, they give a minimum set of requirements to get the cheapest price on the CPE. And when you have different vendors which have different IPv6 capabilities, and IPv6 is mandatory, but they never test it thoroughly, and there's always different sets of bugs with each and every CPE. So that is basically the main reason why it's not widely adopted.
So it's just the V6 capable logo that they have, but without testing actually the features there.
Yeah, there's some basic features, but the support is really lacking. And like when you build a network, when you have like 100,000 or 200,000 subscribers, like the CP is probably the biggest expense you can have in your network. It's like one piece is not so expensive, but when you have it, a lot of them, it comes like more than your core network. So it's like every euro counts. Yep. And this is something the operators are saving on, and which they don't have basically time or the money to just go with it to implement IPv6 fully.
Okay. Yeah. No, thanks for that. Thanks. Yeah. That's a good answer. Welcome. And George, you kind of touched on the CPE as well, but you also provide the CPE, according to my understanding, but you've got over that problem.
Yeah, we provide the CPE and we manage the CPE, but we ask for specific implementation to be on the CPE. There is a specific protocol you have to follow if you want to go to IPv6 only. You have to choose something and stick to it, and your CPE vendors have to support it. But it is true what we just heard, and it gets expensive. Okay, definitely. But what else can you do?
Yeah. No, I understand. Any other thoughts, comments from the floor? Yes, please.
Hello, Arun Shunal Zeront. I was wondering, with the implementation of IPv6, in the case of a criminal court case, let's say, and you're supposed to prove to the court that the IP address of the CPE, the customer, is indeed the customer's, so you pinpoint it to the person that is being prosecuted. Does IPv6 make it easier because you can assign public IPv6 addresses directly to the CPEs instead of doing CGNAT with IPv4? Thank you.
You kind of touched on that, Pavel.
But I will start a bit.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, George.
Obviously, if you're hidden behind CGN, you cannot do a lot of things unless you are forced to have a huge investment of logging everything, and also have the support from the other end. For example, Facebook must give you an IP and a port in order to be able to correlate. I don't think that is happening. But practically, it's the only way to become sort of compliant in that environment. It's no other way.
Okay, we have the same problem exactly. And I know that Facebook just give the IP address, so operator then asks for us to give you source port, destination port. Same, if you give him like a domain name, it's not enough. You need an IP address and always going around. And also what George said, they have a huge investment, but then if you see it's better to force them to make a huge investment to identify unique person behind the NAT, or to maybe to this money give to the to deployment of IP version 6. They have to make a trade-off. I'm sorry to hear this from a colleague from Croatia, because our, let's say, biggest provider, it's so the owner of our biggest provider, it's Croatia Telecom, so it's probably the same politics in Croatia like in Montenegro, so they want to buy this CP, so we are stuck. But maybe this 4IG, which is owner of one mobile operator, maybe they will do something. But usually in Montenegro, if one operator implements something, the rest follow them. So I think if they cannot put something on the billboard, IPv6 is better for this and this, I think they will wait until end to implement it.
So you touched on an interesting thing, and last year we also had research work and a panel on the fact that a lot of companies in the region here are owned by mother companies that might be in the region or might be outside of the region. To get IPv6 deployed, do you think that's something that you discuss on the local country level, or do you need to go to like the mother companies and have them push down that as a strategy?
I mean, probably the mother companies decide about this. Maybe if they want to use like usually they in the past they use like Montenegro like a pilot project, because it's a small country, probably it's a small investment, so they try it, how it's working, and then maybe implement in the, let's say, the country where is the owner is. But in this case, there's no movement. But I think in Germany it's a high up of over 50%. I mean, it's take up of IPv6. Also in Hungary it's like this. In Serbia it's a bit low. It's owner of third operators. So all operators in Montenegro are owned by the company outside of the Montenegro.
Okay. I'll circle back to panelists on discussion, but I see a comment, please.
Hi, Blagoj, Spider Macedonia. I want to ask you, do you aware of some vendor or hardware who is only IPv6 configuration inside? Maybe that will produce more advanced implement of IPv6.
You mean modem that's v6 only?
Yes.
That does not support IPv4?
Yes. Someone is aware about hardware like that?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I have to answer with a question. Who would buy that?
That is a good question, but if some vendors have to offer some kind of equipment, maybe Vasja will buy it because he have only IPv6 addresses.
Yeah,
it's a different way of thinking.
It's an interesting one, and I'm looking at Jan now because I'm going to ask him a question. At the IETF, I remember that a while back there used to be the IPv4 sunsets work that was done, and they were looking into when certain network cards boot, they require v4. Where did that work go? What's happening there at the IETF level?
Well,
for those that don't know you,
Sunset. Who are you? Oh, who am I?
Who are you?
I'm Jan George. I'm from Slovenia. The thing at the ITF went into the infinite loop that escalated into catch-22, and then it died of a horrible death. Sadly. Because people that wanted to push forward the IPv4 sunset, they just gave up. But we didn't mention it yet. There is a very good initiative from the Polish government. They accepted not the law but the resolution that every public service that is on the internet has to implement IPv6 until 2028, I think, something like this.
You mean the Czech government?
Czech government, sorry,
yes.
Czech government.
Yeah.
And with the yearly reports, and on the 6th of June 2032, they will switch off IPv4 for all public services that are provided to the normal people. So this might be a good incentive for the operators in the country to actually implement IPv6 and offer it to the end users.
No, but thanks for that. But just kind of circling back to that V4 sunset thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember to the question that was asked, are there modems that are just going to be V6 only? My understanding is that they need to boot on V4 first before they can do V6. Do you remember that work?
I don't think they had to, but now I think this should be fixed. It's like 2024. I think that lots of operators are now pushing the CPE vendors to actually implement the part of 464 XLAT into the CPE to follow the path of the mobile operators when the CLAT is actually part of a CPE, when you can have the private IPv4 addressing behind the CPE and IPv6 only from the CPE to the core and then to the translation, where you can reach the legacy part of the internet.
Yep. No, I appreciate the answer.
Can I go back?
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you for speaking. I know that you have difficulty speaking, so thanks for that, Jan. Yep, please.
Brian again. So I just want to reflect about what Pavle said regarding the different countries which are owned by bigger companies. There's a difference between, for example, I will not name a big provider in Croatia, which is also an owner of ISP in Montenegro. The German owner basically has a much more expensive CP in Germany rather than in Croatia and Montenegro, and this is actually a big part of the equation. So countries can implement IPv6 on their own, but they lack the financial means to do it. And reflecting also to the question which Blago had regarding the IPv6 only equipment. So I was fortunate enough to work on a project in 2013 on an IPv6 only network, and I was connected at my home for 4 or 5 years for the duration of the pilot on IPv6 only. So it works. I mean, it's not something that's for testing. It works, but the project was closed due to financial reasons. So if you have the money, it works, but if you don't have it, it's not really high on the priority list.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Vasja?
Sorry, one more comment.
Oh, please.
In the IPv6 only, I thought of an example. Sorry, I cannot consider, have eye contact, sorry. iPhone could be such an example. If you're working in an IPv6 only operator, the operator will push the configuration and the settings aren't configurable from the end user. So it's a device that, of course, has the capabilities to work V4 only, dual stack, or V6 only. But if the operator push the V6 only setup, then it's an IPv6 only terminal. And it's quite popular, I could say. Okay.
And I wanted to answer to that also.
Who
because my name is Vesna, I'm from the RIPE NCC, and I'm speaking for Tore Andersson, who has been working a lot on promoting the IPv6 only protocol stack and the data center. So he presented at some of the RIPE NCC events about it, and he wrote RFCs about it, and a blog post at LACNIC blog. That's like the recent one, the most recent one. He designed the IPv6 only data center with this financial savings in mind, and so it does work. It has been made to work, but maybe again going back to Branimir, if you are from Norway and you have money, so that can be a consideration too.
Yeah, please.
I'm Božo Krstajić from University of Montenegro. I'd like to share some experience from Montenegro in some similar initiative in past many years. For instance, for distance learning, for e-learning, for some other initiative which I pushed with my team many years ago in Montenegro, each time it happened that we have to be prepared and ready to implement that. And something happened after that, and deployment do like just that. For instance, distance learning, we pushed maybe 20 years ago and promoted that and tried to establish in many faculties, but nothing happened. Almost couple faculties used that, but when happened COVID infection, for 20 days, 1 month, all institutions implement instance learning or distance learning. So that means we have to be capable, we have to have some trainings to be ready, and maybe some or government body or something like that. We have some occur something, some events, and we will deploy that, especially in Montenegro. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pedro. I appreciate it. And I appreciate that we're hearing from a lot of different countries. We're getting, Montenegro, we heard from Croatia, we have Greece, well, Slovenia. So yes, other countries, please, that are in the room here, feel free to share your experiences, not looking at anybody particular. But looking at my panelists again, while people are thinking if they want to go to the mic, pain points. Like, what's been your biggest pain point? And if people can think about that while we go around, like, the biggest hurdle that you are still, like, you had to go over, or you're still going through with IPv6? What would that be?
Maybe still the CPs that will be ready till the end of the year. So we're trying to solve mainly this problem. Because we are pushing IPv6 through the radius out, but it's not, on the other end, it's disabled, so that is it.
And in terms of technologies that you're using, you find interoperability technologies that there's no feature parity, let's say, between what you can offer on v4 and v6 today?
There is a performance increase because the path it's shorter, so but there is a performance increase, and it's straightforward connection. So we don't do anything. So we even do not track that connection.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Pavle.
As I think right now, I think that when we do this, it was like in a strategy, and then we thought, okay, we make the plan and then go everything by the plan. But I think we should have included the government at the moment and talk to operator, made a meeting with the operator in the government, and maybe make some decision, set the date, because like this, I think it's always it's easy to find a reason not to do it, I think, like anything else.
Thanks for that. George.
Well, I wouldn't point something technical. I would say the biggest problem is cultural. Okay. All technologies have problems, and all are solved one way or another at certain time. But you have to want this. You have to follow the change, or to be willing to spend some more time. And IPv6 is a driven, let's call it technology, from ISPs and from CDNs, but it's not from the networking industry. Okay, that's the biggest problem that we have, I would say.
I think that's an interesting point. I'll stay with that for a second, because like if you look at the law of diffusion and adoption of technologies, you have like the different phases where you have like the innovators, the first movers, the laggards, and there's like a science to this. And what they usually say is like there's this conversion point around like 18% once a technology or an idea gets diffused, it gets mass market acceptance and adoption when it hits like that 18-20%. In Greece here, you have higher numbers, but you still struggle with what you're saying?
Yes, because these numbers are practically the end users. That the third time I'm going to say that. They don't care. They just want the content. But people who design networks, who build solutions, who have enterprise to support their end users in an enterprise environment, they just want to be able to solve their problems quicker and easier. And when you have two stacks to support, in whatever terminal you might think of, it's a bit more difficult. It's maybe double difficult.
It's double the work. You're provisioning over to networks.
So again, it's cost.
Mm-hmm.
You want to, it's difficult.
Okay, that's fair. Qasim?
Yeah, I think it's right that it's also a lot of cultural that comes into this, that people want to actually adopt. Have to put energy, time, and resources to get V6. I think one of the studies that I saw from Washington University was to look at different industry types and see adoption rates across different industry types. And they, from their data, they were able to say that the cellular are the faster growing, but as George said, like the enterprise network are the slowest. And they, with their research, they pinpointed that the enterprise networks are actually where the customers are, and they probably do not either have enough information or they don't want to move because it just works, and this is more simpler for them to actually move. So again, my initial point of incentives, that needs to have the right incentives for them to actually start moving, and they are like the ones that are making this whole thing lagging behind.
Thanks for that. Looking at the room for final comments, I see we couldn't keep Jan away. Jan?
Jan. Well, maybe we should all go back home tomorrow and talk to our governments and make them follow the example from the Czech government. It's 6th of June 2032, and that might be the IPv4 sunset day.
Actually, that's an interesting thought, because for the original IPv6 day, a bunch of big content providers, the Googles, the Yahoos, the whatever, they agreed on that day, all of them, to switch it on together to address the brokenness. And maybe if a number of governments take that jump together, that might be that next step, right?
And I have a feeling that the RIPE NCC with the policy team can also help in this matter.
The RIPE NCC is always happy to provide any support that we can, obviously. Other thoughts, comments from the ground, the floor? No? If so, thank you very much. This has been a great panel. Thank you to my panelists. Please thank them with me. And we now have a coffee break, so please enjoy.